Hello, Andy Strong here, and welcome back to the Fundamentally Fit podcast with me, your host, Andy Strong, and we are episode number 48. We're flying through. We are narrowing in on the 50 podcast mark, and today we're going to be talking about a topic that's kind of creeping into the health and fitness space more and more and more, and I'm hearing more and more people say this to me and around me, and it's frustrating. It's misleading, and it's very, very bad advice. It's coming from people who are very ill-informed, and they're not looking at the much bigger picture. This one's maybe not for you listening to it, but it certainly is quite controversial one for me. Is the whole concept around eating less and moving more being a broken concept and not actually being something that works to help people with their diet and with their lifestyle. And there certainly are lots of caveats that go with this piece of advice. It's a very simplistic piece of advice, and today we're going to break down the detail behind it, but I'm also going to give you some reasons as to why I think certainly for most of the people that I work with who have 3 or more stone to lose, just like I did, this advice is really important. It's practical, and if you overlook it, unfortunately, you're going to come up against barriers, because if you ignore this piece of advice, and if you believe and take to heart that this piece of advice is wrong, or this piece of advice is broken, as is now a lot of people are saying, then you are, in my opinion, leaving yourself very, very wide open to people that are going to sell you crappy products. They're going to get you onto rubbish dietary routines that are going to leave you miserable and that could potentially damage your health. And you are leaving yourself wide open. And unfortunately, it's that kind of mentality that leads people to thinking there are magic solutions to weight loss, and that all we're waiting for a solution and an answer. And the answer for the majority of people is already out there. But I am going to give you some reasons as to why eating less and moving more is much more challenging than maybe you realize, and maybe why you've struggled with it. And it isn't the concept that's broken, but there are some very legitimate reasons as to why you may or may not be finding this particularly hard, particularly challenging. So I really want to give you some context behind this today. And this podcast particularly has come about for a few reasons. I really do enjoy researching the environmental factors around why we eat what we eat and why we do what we do. It's something I do a lot of reading on in my spare time. I like to understand why we make the decisions we make, and the environmental factors are huge with that. Particularly good book I've been reading at the moment. It's called Poverty Safari. It goes into lots of the reasons around the habits and behaviours of the people in the lower classes, and how poverty can have a massive impact not just on your diet but all aspects of your life. And that's a really fascinating read and interesting insight as to why a lot of us make those choices. Having been someone who's grown up from a background where we didn't always have a lot of money, I can certainly relate to some of the stuff in there as well. So that's a great book to check out. But today, this also came about for a conversation I had recently at a barbecue. So I met this individual at a barbecue, not someone I've met before. We're having a chat about what I did, asked what my philosophy was, and I told him, I summed up what I did. It's all about balance, and it's about creating balance in your lifestyle, balance in your exercise, and trying to find a routine that fits within your own lifestyle. And that's how I've helped so many people lose the weight that they want to lose, but not just lose it. My clients keep that weight off, and that's something I'm incredibly proud of. But he threw the accusation back at me that I was sitting on the fence, and that actually by not committing to a said dietary protocol, say ketogenic or paleo or something like that, that actually I was sitting on the fence. And as I explained to him, and as I'm going to break down today, actually that's really not the case, because if you are someone who is still thinking that there is a magic solution out there, and that you're not prepared to look at the balance and how your lifestyle interacts, it's probably the reason that you're not getting to where you want to be, because it means that you're leaving yourself wide open to all of these other protocols and diets and routines and potions and pills, because you're still hanging on for the fact that you feel there should be some kind of quick fixed solution. And with all due respect to this individual, of the two of us, I lost my 3 stone many years ago, probably 10 years ago or more now, and I've sustained that all this time. This individual was clearly having struggles with their own weight, and therefore, of the two of us, being the health professional and being the one who had actually used this routine, not just for myself but with other clients, I felt quite sad for him that he was still struggling and not prepared to actually look a little bit closer as to where he was actually struggling, and actually wanted to look externally for a reason as to why he couldn't be the way that he wanted to be. So that being said, let's get into today's podcast. We're going to break it down to a few different areas. This is why I feel so strongly about the fact that why eating less and moving more is not a broken concept, and it is at the heart of why the majority of us are struggling to lose weight, and why it is an important concept. If we can take to heart, the majority of us will see much more progress. Now, I accept and I put my hands up, this is not the only solution, but it is a very, very big key factor in it. So, kicking off, portion sizes. Eating less is important, yes, to lose weight. We need to create a calorie deficit, and you can go around it any way you want. You can call it points, you can call it sins, you can call it, whatever you want. But effectively, to lose weight, we need to create a calorie deficit, and that is unavoidable for even the people that hate counting calories and all these different things. Whatever way you choose to do it, weight loss happens when we're in a calorie deficit. That's an undeniable scientific proven fact. Now, yes, there can be a few other factors that make that a little bit harder, usually hormonal, but weight loss comes when you're in a calorie deficit. So the biggest part of that comes down to portion sizes, and portion sizes have increased dramatically over recent years. And if we look at a 2015 study done by Cambridge University, they were looking at portion sizes, and they looked at if British consumers, this is what they had to say, if British consumers could avoid outsized portions, they would cut the amount of energy they get every day from food by 10 to 16%, or 279 calories, the authors of this study said. They also said if American adults did the same, they could reduce their intake by 22 to 29%, or a maximum of 527 calories each and every day. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. Two things actually. One, a 16% reduction in your calories, 300 calories. Well, we know that to lose a pound of fat, we need to create a 3,500 calorie deficit over a 7-day period. What that means is each day you need to create a 500 calorie deficit through physical activity, which is walking, exercise, getting your heart rate a little bit higher, and of course having a nice tidy diet and not over consuming calories. So if reducing your portion sizes back to what they actually should be, and remember, we're talking about outsized portions. So this is the growth of portion sizes in the shops, restaurants, supermarkets, and everywhere that we've been. We could reduce our calorie intake by nearly, or just short of 300 calories. That's nearly your entire calorie deficit required for weight loss to lose a pound a week. It's the biggest chunk of it. And again, if you compare that then to America, where if they did the same thing, they would reduce their portion sizes by 29% and 500 calories. You can see how much bigger their portion sizes are compared to the UK. So everybody knows America has much bigger portion sizes. If you're listening in America, sorry guys, but you really do have much bigger portion sizes. When we come over from the UK, it's a bit of a joke here in the UK, because we always know when someone's going to America, they're going to come back bigger. And that's if you guys live there, that's really challenging to live with. I really do feel for you, because that's your environment. You can't just change that. So you have to live with that. But these outsized portions are the thing that are really holding a lot of people back. And so this particular study, it's a little bit out of date now, I will admit that, but this particular study, it was collated by the British Heart Foundation back in 2013, and these are a few of the things they found. So it showed that curry ready meals had expanded by 50% in portion size over the previous 20 years, as had the number of crisps in family bags. An individual serving of shepherd's pie as a ready meal had grown by 98%, chicken pies were now 40% bigger, and meat lasagna ready meal for one had also increased by 39%. So again, so just a few examples there. The portion sizes that we're getting in the supermarkets, the portion sizes that we're buying in the takeaways, in the coffee shops, in the fast food places, they're all getting bigger. Now, I mean, we all know in the UK here, there's a very famous high street coffee shop. It's not the best coffee in the world, so I wouldn't bother personally. But if you want to have a large there, their cup comes out with 2 handles. I mean, who needs a cup with 2 handles? I mean, it's like drinking from a bucket. That is what I'm talking about with outsize and oversize. There is no normal. I mean, if you go to the other famous coffee shop with the green lady, you can ask for a short, and I think they do now sell it at just as a normal small, but it used to be called a short, which was basically a normal sized cup of coffee. And this is the kind of thing that we're talking about, because this has become part of our environment everywhere that we go. It's become normal. We now accept that value is linked to the size of the portion size. So if we go out and we get a big plate of food, we think to ourselves, yeah, that's a good meal. That's good value for money. Well, it might be good value for money, but that's the food industry trying to sell you more, trying to get you to buy more, because if you think it's value and you go back, ultimately they're going to make more money. The problem for you is you're eating a day's worth of calories, sometimes, well in excess of a day and a half's worth of calories. In some places it can be 2 days worth of calories in a single meal. This is not impossible, and it's very, very easily done, and I'm sure many of you are doing it each day without even realizing. So portion size is one of the biggest impacts on eating less and moving more being an equation that can actually work for weight loss. Now, for many of my clients, 3 or more stone to lose, the biggest thing there is actually, these are great things to start with, because you can make relatively small changes, taking out a lunch that they're eating out every day and swapping it for a home cooked meal, taking out a takeaway and introducing something that's a little bit healthier. And all of a sudden, we're not just getting them to eat something that's more natural, it's got less additives, is better for them, but actually the calorie content is just so dramatically less, and they feel much better for it, and the weight loss starts. And it's great to get that momentum building, and this is a really, really smart way to do it. The other thing to consider as well is the food labeling that goes into a lot of this, because the food labeling laws are, let's say, flexible. Now, it's always important when you check your food labels to make sure you know what the portion size is. So when you look on the front and they've got those quick labels, they're not always going to be color coded for the traffic lights to make it easy, because they don't want you to know. Sometimes they might be color coded in a way that makes them look like it's a healthier product than it really is. So for example, you might have half a packet of fresh pasta to make sure that all the labels are green and not too many red. But actually, if that does that reflect what a correct portion size would look like in terms of what you would expect to eat? So always check that portion size, see what it is. I know that a lot of chocolate bar companies will have like 112 calories on the front of the packet as a little treat-wise logo. People think, great, I didn't realize this whole bar of chocolate was 112 calories. And in the tiniest super print, it will say per 3 chunks. So they're still ending up putting away 200-300 calories per chocolate bar, and it is very, very easily done. So it's from the simplest point of view, it might be perceived value in terms of bigger portions, but bigger portions and bigger packets also equal bigger waistlines. So reducing our oversized portions and getting a grip on what a portion size should be is one of the very most important things that anybody can do when looking to lose weight. Something I teach all of my clients very early on, and it's a skill that you have to hone and you have to move forward with, but it's really, really important. Now, moving on from there and linking in quite closely to this is the frequency at which we are now all eating out. Now, I had a look into some of the stats for this. Now, in 2008, the market for dining out in the UK was worth £73.5 billion. Now in 2017 that had jumped to £87.9 billion, and all I hear from lots of people is that they don't have the money to buy healthy food. £87.9 billion spent on eating out, and that is coffees, sandwiches, lunches, evening meals, takeaways, everything that we don't eat at home. It's in that number, and it is growing really, really quickly. Now, according to NDP Group, 83 million dining out visits were going to be made in 2019 in the UK alone, and 101 million deliveries will also be made by 2019. Now, the reason there's a big increase in deliveries, they're coming from things like Deliveroo, Uber Eats, and just the general takeaway market is expanding. They're expecting there to be an additional £656 million, or a 17% increase by 2019. That market is exploding, and I even tweeted out about this last week in my rage as I came home to find a McDonald's leaflet advertising the fact I can now have McDonald's delivered to my front door. I wouldn't go there anyway, but I often go to the gym on a Sunday morning, and I'll come back, my other half will sit in the window of our favourite coffee shop, have a cup of coffee, and the amount of people, we always comment on it, the amount of people that are out carrying McDonald's brown paper bags that are having McDonald's for their breakfast on a Sunday. Now, I don't say this to be rude or disparaging. a lot of the people that go into McDonald's, and I see this regularly, that is legitimately the only walk that they will do to go and buy that. And if they can have it delivered, you're removing another thing that they don't have to do. And it might seem like a really, really small thing, but they really, really do add up. And we'll come to that a little bit later. But eating out, we're having more and more delivered to us, and that is a market that is just exploding. Now, in these statistics, apparently breakfast is currently the biggest increase of eating out, with sales this year predicted to grow by 5.7% and a further 4.8% in 2019. So breakfast is the trend at the moment. That is what everyone is doing. We're eating out more and more for breakfast, and lunch is also increasing as well, whilst a slight decrease of our evening meals. So we're dining out in the evening less, but we are having more and more takeaways and taking advantage of these new delivery services from restaurants that wouldn't necessarily deliver before. And eating out also means cooking less, and it also means that I see this as a big problem with people, because as they're cooking less, this is legitimately a life skill that I am seeing people struggling with and not really getting to grips with. And if you don't value the ability to cook yourself a home cooked meal from scratch, even if it's a basic one, if you don't value that life skill, and if you don't value the ability to do that, and if you don't value your time enough to do it, then legitimately you're going to struggle with your weight. There's no getting away from that. As much as I'd love to say that you can eat out and you can eat healthy all the time, reality is most of the stuff you're going to eat while you're eating out, despite the fact there are better options available. Most of the portions are still too big. Most of the salt content is still too high. Most of the saturated fat content is still higher than it should be. There are many additives added to a lot of these foods, and ultimately you don't have control over where it came from, how it was cooked, what the preparation was, and it just isn't going to be as healthy and as fresh as if you cooked it at home. That's a fact. And so if you value your health and you're really serious about your weight loss, cooking at home, controlling the portion sizes, and actually taking time to think about the food that you're eating, digesting it, chewing it, being in the moment, talking to your friends or your family that are around while you're enjoying that meal. If you're permanently just eating on the go, and I see so many people now that have a very unstructured, very unhealthy evening meal because they've eaten various things through the day and then are not putting together that evening meal in the way that they should. It's just all too common. So we're cooking less. It's a life skill that's valued a lot less, and that's a real problem, because if we add the fact that we're eating out more and more and more, as we can see from these stats here, and we add that to the fact that the 2015 Cambridge study looked at the fact that we are eating bigger portion sizes because of the portion size growth in the supermarkets, in the fast food chains, and in the restaurants, then we are actively exposing ourselves to that environment where we are going to be given oversized portions more and more and more. And what do you think happens when you then do cook at home? Your portion size is going to be bigger, because that's what you're going to perceive a portion size to be. So is it eating less is the problem, or is it that our normal is not normal or shouldn't be normal for where we are? So eating less means eating less of these oversized portions and actually reconnecting with what your portions should really honestly look like. And that's a big problem, again, for most of the people that I work with. Now, if we then jump across a little bit, so we looked at the food marketing a little bit. I'm going to do another whole podcast on that another day. I then wanted to look at the move more. So there are a few legitimate reasons there why we're struggling with eating less. Portion sizes have grown exponentially. We are eating out more and more and more, so we're exposed to this environment more and more and more, and we just don't value cooking in the way that we did, making time for it, batch cooking, all these things. These are lots of things I get grumbles about. I don't have time for this, I don't want to do that, I can't do that, I don't want to do this. The clients that are successful, they do it and they get the results, and they're the ones that are successful for the long term. So the principles of weight loss are universal, but the path that everybody has to walk is uniquely their own. And that's something that's really important, not just from this podcast, but as a whole weight loss philosophy and concept. And if you can take that to heart and kind of keep that with you, that will really help. The principles of weight loss are universal. They absolutely are. But the path that you have to walk is uniquely your own. You have to create that environment. You have to create that diet and that lifestyle that does fit for you. Now, I wanted to look at the move more, and I looked at the walk-in statistics, and this was a YouGov study commissioned by Cancer Research UK, and this and also looked at the national statistics for England as well. So There we go. So a poll of 2,198 adults conducted by the YouGov, and commissioned by charity Cancer Research UK found that on average 52% of adults walk a mile or less during the week, the equivalent of 2,000 steps, and almost a fifth, 17%, walk less than quarter of a mile. Now this is really important, really important. Anybody that works with me that's listening to this podcast knows exactly what I'm going to say, because I say it all the time. Exercise is not the best thing for weight loss, and the reason for that is because it's a condensed period of time. You're getting your heart rate up, you're burning more calories. That's a really good thing. The bigger calorie burn in your week comes from the daily physical activity, and that means walking. It means going up the stairs, it means walking to the train station, it means going for a walk when you get home from work. That is how you get your daily physical activity. It is the daily physical activity that increases your calorie burn over the day and over the week. Exercise, an amazing additional top up. It gets you across the line, it gets your calorie burn even higher, helps you create that more sustainable, bigger deficit, which picks up some of the slack when some of your portions and some of your choices, or you have that extra glass of wine. It gives you just a little bit of scope. But exercise is not the best, absolute singular best way of losing weight. And I think anyone in the health and fitness industry who's got any savvy will fully admit that. And if they're telling you otherwise, then they're either being disingenuous or they are genuinely not very good at their job. Now, in terms of the walking and our general physical activity, very low. And I see this regularly again, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, because there is such a rise in working from home. That's particularly made this worse. I do see regularly lots of people that don't do more than 2,000 or 3,000 steps per day. Should be around 10,000. The clients that are doing between 12 and 14,000 regularly on average are the ones that are consistently losing weight when added in with their exercise and looking after their portions and the quality of their diet. That's really what it needs to look like. So 12 to 14,000 steps, make that your target if you're not doing that already. Build up to, even if it takes you a couple of months, just do a few extra, just 200 or 300 extra steps per day, each for a week. So if you're doing 2,000, do 2,300, do that for a week, add in another 300 and build it up gradually, but you will get there and it will become the norm. Now, if we look at the trends from 2005 to 2015, this comes from the National Statistics for Health England, and they had this to say. So trends in walking trips between 2005 and 2015, the average walking trips decreased by 19%, from around 4.7 trips per week to 3.8 trips per week. The average distance walked decreased by 8%, from around 3.8 miles to 3.5 miles per week. So we can see that our daily physical activity, our walking, the most basic activity that we need to do to function as humans, is basically grinding to a halt. And if you compare this to, in the past, where not everybody had cars, or we would walk to the train station, or our jobs were more active, working in factories, working more manual jobs than we do right now. We used to be much more active, and we didn't have the health complaints that we do today. And that is a big proportion of that. So the fact that we are now much more sedentary, many more of the industries are tech industries. We're sitting down, we're at the computers, we're on the phone, we're driving for work, all working from home. On conference calls, all of these different things mean that we're sitting more, and if we're sitting more, not only is that bad for our health and our posture and everything else, but it just simply means that we're walking less, so we are being less active. So this whole move more not working, actually we've got to do a lot more moving just to get back to where we should be. Now, if we add that to the fact that our portion sizes are oversized dramatically, and the fact that our walking and daily activity has reduced dramatically, that puts us into quite a uniquely unhealthy and unbalanced place. It doesn't mean the concept of moving more and eating less is broken, but it does put us in a difficult place where we have to tackle some very serious environmental factors for many of us to truly hit our end goal. And of course, there are going to be other factors in this for some people, things like the menopause, hormonal issues. They can play a very important leading role to why some people can't lose weight, but I cannot stress and emphasize more, that is not the norm for most people, for the vast majority of people. So if we actually now just jump across, there's one more bit to this that I want to look at. And this is interesting because the same study from the Health England study looked at activity levels, and actually, where are we? My other sheet. It actually shows that just over 60% of people, of men, are reaching their weekly daily activity levels, which is at least 150 minutes of moderate activity or 75 minutes of vigorous activity per week. Now, if we look at this, we can see that as the generation gets a little bit older, then it starts to drop off and the activity level becomes less. But we can see that over 50% are doing the weekly exercise requirement, and that's a really good thing. But I think this probably is why some people are getting confused as to why eat less, move more doesn't work or does work. Because if we have just over 50% of the population that are legitimately doing the movement that they need to basically hit the government recommendations, that's a really good thing. But if we say it's 50%, and there's people at any one time stopping and starting new regimes, stopping old regimes, then there's a turnover of people within that 50%. So at any one time, we've probably had a big proportion of the population has been in an exercise routine in the last, let's say, 12 months. Now, not all, definitely not all, but much more than that 50% mark. And I would imagine that, this is anecdotal, but I would imagine a lot of those people that dropped out because they're frustrated because they're not getting the weight loss. And I think some of this comes down to the fact that too much emphasis has been put on exercise as the sole route of weight loss. And a lot of that comes down to the health and fitness industry, because they're very, very keen to sell, obviously, services, products, and, same as myself, I have, coaching options there. I want to work with people that are serious about weight loss because I feel I have a message and a way of helping people that will help them get to where they want to be for the long term, ethically and sustainably. But not everybody has that view. Lots of people will want to just sell a product. They want to, they don't care if you come back. They don't care if they give you a terrible service, because once they've got your money, then they're happy. It's a huge market. There's lots of people overweight. There's not a supply of people that is drying up overnight, or certainly not anytime soon, that they can sell these things to. And so I think that there's been too much emphasis placed on weight loss from exercise, and it's important, and it is very important to help. But exercise, and I've said this on the podcast before, plays a leading role in weight loss, but it's actually as if not more beneficial for creating definition and tone to give you the sculpted body that you want. It's important to keep you injury free, helps you to reduce your risk of osteoporosis. It helps to give your circulatory system, your heart and your lungs really healthy, helps reduce your risk of heart disease, helps improve your circulation in general. The list of things that exercise is good for, like in a recent study, more powerful than antidepressants, exercise. It's really powerful for depression. So exercise, you could not understate how good it is at so many different things. But if you was to say, is exercise solely the very best thing for weight loss? You've got to say no. It plays a very important part. In isolation, it is not enough. You need to be looking at your diet, you need to be looking at your daily physical activity, and you need to look at your weekly physical activity from exercise. It's all of those components together, and of course then we have the mindset, the environment as well, that plays a very pivotal role as to how successful you'll actually be. So I think that the reason a lot of people are saying that this concept of eat less and move more doesn't work is because lots of people, particularly I would say in the last 20 years, have been in very serious exercise regimes at one point or another. They probably lost weight, but they probably found it really hard to sustain, because if that's all they're focusing on, it is exhausting. And if you're not someone who absolutely loves exercise, that's really hard to sustain if that's the only thing that you're doing. If you haven't learned the fundamental skills of managing your portion control, getting your daily physical activity up, and not worrying if maybe you do miss a session at the gym, but your daily physical activity is much higher. If you don't understand how to balance out your alcohol, how to create a meal, how to cook a healthy balanced meal, and how to manage your alcohol intake, all of these things together, if you can't do all of those, then just looking at exercise is going to become exhausting, and it's not going to get you the results that you want. It doesn't mean that eating less and moving more isn't the solution, but what it does mean is that if we are, as so often is done in the health and fitness space, we are looking very, very focused just on one thing for the solution. If we are focused really, really razor sharp just on that one thing, chances are it's really not going to get you where you want to be. And it might, you might cut out carbs, you might go on a ketogenic diet, you might intermittent fast, you might go on a paleo diet, go super high protein. But how sustainable are these things? How long have you managed to keep that weight off? Did you feel miserable while you were doing it? Did you feel miserable counting sins or points or whatever the routine was? Because I wouldn't mind betting, from the experience of the people that I work with, if you create a routine that is based around your lifestyle, if it's based around your work life, your family life, if it's based around what you enjoy, then it becomes much, much easier to become sustainable. Now, you might not lose all the weight, but you're going to achieve something that fits your routine. And let's say, for example, say you've got 3 stone to lose and you lose 1.5 stone, but it fits your lifestyle and you can keep that 1.5 stone off. Would you say that it's better to lose that 1.5 stone and know that in the next 2 to 3 years you keep that 1.5 stone off until something changes in your lifestyle and you have got more time to exercise, or you have got more time to cook more meals, or would you rather go on a really dramatic diet, lose 3 stone, and know that you're going to put 3 or more stone back on by the end of the year? Which is more healthy for your body? Which is your body going to appreciate more? And actually, what's going to be better for your long-term health? And that is pretty much the end of today's podcast. So, as I've said before, we need to stop looking for magic solutions. I was told that I was sitting on the fence in terms of my approach. Actually, I think if you're the one looking for magic solutions and you think that eat less and move more is a broken concept, then I think you're going to be disappointed, because it isn't a broken concept. But I will admit it's not the only answer. But for a nation with health like ours, it's a very real step in the right direction. And I think if more people were able to look a little bit broader, then we'd be able to move forward much, much faster. So I hope you've enjoyed this podcast this week, episode number 48. I am going to try and record an episode for next week, but I will be away on holiday shortly. I will actually be away for my wedding. So lots of the listeners are coming along to that. A lot of my friends will be there, which will be fantastic. It'll be up in sunny Scotland, or Touchwood. I hope it's going to be sunny, because I'm hoping to get married outside. And then I will be back at the end of September. I've got lots of content. I've written lots and lots of blogs and things. So do head over to Facebook, check those out, or head over to fundamentallyfitnutrition.com. You can request a consultation over there where we can have a chat about your own health and fitness goals. You can also grab our free kitchen audit, which is a great way, particularly if you're coming back off of holiday. Head over there right now. There'll be a link down below. If you're on the website, it'll be down below. If you're over on SoundCloud, it'll be down below as well. If not, head over to fundamentallyfitnutrition.com, one word, no www. And you can pick up your kitchen audit. And if you've just come back off holiday, it's some really, really practical advice about how you can overhaul your diet, start to clear out some of the foods, buy in some of the more healthier things. There's also a free webinar that you can jump on. It's free. You can access it immediately. There's no email required for any of that. You can just go on, you can download it, and we send it straight out to you. There's no marketing goes with that. It's just free for you to access. If you would like to join our weekly mailing list, there is also the opportunity to join the Fundamentally Fit newsletter as well. We'd love to have you part of the community. We've got lots of things coming out after my wedding. As always, it's been a busy year, and I hope to hopefully try to get a little bit more recorded before I go away. But if not, I will be back with you at the end of September. So do let us know. What do you think? Eat less, move more, broken concept? Am I talking sense? Have you learned some things that you didn't know, or you have the opinion that actually we need to move on and maybe find a new way of losing weight, and actually that you've tried it and it didn't work for you? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, leave us a review, leave us a thumbs up, and I will look forward to speaking to you in episode number 48, 49 in the next podcast very soon.